The King of the Battlefield Chapter 271. Glad to meet you. I'm Augur, the leader of the Bolters. It was a great big castle. As if the dwarfs have built it, the exterior of the castle was large and magnificent, and elves, holding their bows, were guarding the castle. The elves, the protectors of the forest, it was said that they were able to predict the trajectories of their arrows. So, if they were guarding the castle, it would be acceptable to assume that no one could enter it easily. The dwarfs and the elves are together. Kim Ti-wan couldn't help but be amazed. The elves and the dwarfs exemplified bad blood between races. However, no sign of any bad feelings could be felt here. Most notably, the castle was enormous enough to house 3 million. It would have been impossible humans to replicate, even with a massive workforce. At this level, there would be no shortcomings in calling it a city. Also notable was the orcs who were guarding the outside of the castle. Goblins and war orcs. Not just any ordinary orcs, but war orcs that were thought to have approximately the intelligence of 15-year-old humans. Having scarlet skin, it could be said that they were a race born for war. With the war orcs guarding the east of the castle while the goblins guarding the west of the castle, their presence was intimidating. Among the goblins, the shudderwalks were predominantly visible. Leader, they wouldn't suddenly feed on us, would they? I feel like I might have leaked a little. Even my manhood may shrivel. Kim Ti-wan's subordinates were well known for their light-heartedness, yet it felt like anxiety has taken over them. That was how imposing the castle was to them. Can a castle like this be built inside the demon god's territory? Just who exactly could have done it? Who was the owner, in the first place? Who was here that such a castle had been built inside the demon god's territory? Kim Ti-wan entered the castle through the entrance. And he opened his mouth slowly. Truly, all kinds of races have gathered here. This is a dream. Hey! Everyone was out of their minds for a while. That was only expected. Elves and goblins, dwarfs, bolters, orcs and ogres were here. Even the special monsters like snowmen or lizard men, too, were here, though few in number. They, too, were looking at the humans with fascination. However, it wasn't in a hostile or belligerent way. If it was an ordinary time, they would set perimeters and fight one another for survival, but as they came together with the same purpose, there was no look of hostility, or aggression. There were some who welcomed the humans who had just entered. Welcome, humans. I'm Grizanali. A smaller number than I thought. I'm Bartas. It was dignified and beautiful elf, and a dwarf wearing a crown. Grizanali, the queen of the elves, and Bartas, the king of the dwarfs. They were so famous even many of the humans knew of them. That was because stories about them were never omitted, always finding places in the diaries of the explorers. Good to meet you. Each city's master has come forth along with Han Sung. Seo Yunhei of the Gunja province, Hyacinth, who was a Malayan saint, came on behalf of the ailing pope, and Master Bahamut of the Radiant Guild, representing the great city. They were all the famous ones who were truly known for their power. As each representative finished short greeting, Grizanali spoke with an affectionate smile. Please, put down your weapons and rest. Our elves will lead you. Soon, following behind the Queen Grizanali, there appeared rows of beautiful elves. As the members of the race that set the standards of beauty among the races approached with smiles, no one was unhappy. Well, resting was resting, but the leaders had things to do. As they were running short of time, they immediately held a leadership meeting. Baltan was there. I'm Baltan, the proxy of my master. Proxy? Then the territory's master is not here. Bahamut, the guild master of the Radiant Guild asked. He wanted to see the territory's master, not the proxy, who had built this type of a castle, and gathered all different races. Naturally, he frowned. The master has vacated his place momentarily on another matter. Another matter? I'm amazed. Was there other matter that was more important than the war against the demon gods? It was a sarcastic remark, but Bolton did not react. The master is already on the move. He is in the midst of creating confusion among the demon gods. Then Augur interjected. He, too, was also at this meeting as the representative of the Bolters. Sir Augur, the master's work is... As Bolton spoke hurriedly, Augur nodded his head. I know. I just want everyone to know that your master is working harder than anyone in this war with the demon gods, that's all. Then the master, when will he be back? Hyacinth opened her small mouth. She came in the place of the Pope, but she knew it as soon as she arrived. This place. That the scent of him was especially strong in this castle. However, he was not here. Hyacinth wet her dry lips. It was because she was used to waiting, but she could not endure it. I do not know. The quicker we move, the sooner the master will show up. Then we'll go faster. This is a right time to discuss a healthier topic than to talk about a person who is not here. As Hyacinth smiled lightly, the atmosphere changed quickly. The power of charm that she wielded was beyond one's imagination. Both the Pope and all of Malalan had fallen under her spell before. Furthermore, to begin with, excluding Xiao Yunzi, the quiet commander, Hyacinth and others instinctively knew as to who the master of this place was. As Hansung knew it too, the work just progressed only quicker. Bolton stood up from his seat, holding several marbles. First, I'll tell you about the first adversary, which is our target. Xiang. As he injected magic into the marble, a shape appeared. It was a huge monster in the form of a rhinoceros. He stood on 2 feet, wore armor, and crushed a mountain. Our first target is the 40th demon god Ram. The condition of his annihilation is to destroy his city. With our unified power, Ram's city must be destroyed. Do you think that we can confront the demon god? Xiao Yunzi asked this time. Bolton nodded his head. We just need to destroy the city. Then his strength will quickly dwindle. Where did that intel come from? It was discovered by Merlin and my master. Oscar, who was wearing the mask of Merlin, smiled in dry sweat. The master of this territory was Muyong. And Muyong had the knowledge of Dantalian. Muyong wanted to progress the plan by separating the demon gods who were easy to confront for them, although those demon gods were difficult for him to face. At any rate, as Merlin has notarized it, some level of faith was there. Xiao Yunzi spoke in a serious tone. He will certainly try to protect the city. There were 8 demon kings under Ram. About 5 million demons reside in the city. Even though we are superior as far as the numbers go, we couldn't face them head-on. Wiping out the demon gods was the objective. It wasn't feasible to drain all their strengths in eliminating just Ram. Then? Do you have another way to destroy the city? Everyone has to do the thing that everyone does best. The elves are quick in their attacks, the dwarfs are strong in launching attacks from the mid-distance, and the orcs are known for their bravery. The goblins are excellent in black arts or elemental attacks, and bolters were the giants known to be wizards of hunting. That wasn't all. Humans were best suited for instantaneous maneuvers and secret plans. Furthermore, with many skills, they can provide good supporting functions. It meant that they would be incredibly effective in the guerrilla warfare, which would be conducted by maximizing the other race's specialties, and by utilizing special capabilities. It was only because they have never mobilized in such a size that if they would come together once, they would form a combination such that they would be able to confront anything. The demon races only trusted their strengths, but they most likely would not have faced so many variables like this. These variables were certainly their strongest weapon, held by everyone that has gathered in this castle. Chapter 272. A War with the Demon Gods, 2. Hwawing. The wind blew. The dark, dead land. Countless bugs overfilled the land. They were the corpses of bugs which were spewing out toxins, polluting the land. In the middle of it, a half-man, a half-beast has fallen on the ground. It was a strange life form, having upper body of an elephant, and the lower body of a human. A member of the coalition party. It was Bane, the 26th demon god, and a part of the coalition. How did you find this place? Bane's body began disappearing as it disintegrated into powder. Having reached the extinction conditions, Bane has met the death of its flesh. Muyong and Crimson Balrog were there before him. Muyong did not respond. Instead, with the death of his flesh, the insects began to decompose. Bane's insect cave. It was the place where Bane ate his food. This, too, had existed in the Dantalian's memory. Although the looked like an elephant, his main diet was bugs. Hence, Bane formed insect caves at many locations where he had stored insects for food. He ate bugs 2 times a year, and those were the times in which the was vulnerable. It was the time for fulfilling the extinction condition, which was eating bugs, that took place only twice in a given year. As a result, Bane appeared at the insect caves during these times. He read it in the Dantalian's memory that Bane would appear all alone, not trusting any of his underlings. Horrible stench. Muru held his nose in the back. Muru was standing here, along with Muyong, in order to take care of Bane. Peruasuk. Afterwards, as Muru stomped on Bane's lower back, the speed at which the body turning into ashes has accelerated. You opposition cockroaches. Baal will not forgive. SSSSSS. Bane completely disappeared not long after. Cray. Cray. Crimson Balrog pounded his own chest. Crimson Balrog did not move away from Muyong's side. Muyong had brought him along, and as a result, Crimson Balrog was helpful in the battle. The level of Crimson Balrog's powers has already risen beyond the level of a demon king. So, it was possible for him to deliver a certain level of damage to demon kings as well. Picking up a large bug from nearby, Muyong threw it into the Crimson Balrog's mouth. He eats everything. It wasn't new, but not being a finicky eater was a kind of strength if it could be called a strength. Perhaps, he might have taken it as a reward, so Crimson Balrog happily screamed even more thunderously. Balrogs have been nearly wiped out. But, hard to believe that such a monster like that one was still remaining. Muru spoke as he nodded his head. Due to the demon gods, Balrogs have reached near extinction. By chasing the previous master of the demon world away, the demon gods have taken over. The demon kings could not kill strong Balrogs. So there were times in which the demon gods had to engage directly. Crimson Balrog. That looked to be the strongest one of them all. Finally, Muru looked at Muyong, as if he has just come around to asking a question. But how did you know at which insect cave the would be? We could not find even though we had tried everything. It was luck. Muyong explained tersely. And by extending his arm, he ate his fill of one of the powers of Bane. It didn't seem that useful. For a demon god, it was possible to sense the movements of insects, even those far away. It was meaningful to have eyes in many locations, but since the effective range was only 100 kilometers radius, it didn't seem that useful. Yet, it would be better to have it than not. Several more windows popped up. His powers have increased as he hunted Bane. However, it was weak compared to the time when he had hunted Larija. Bane was not a war demon god. There was an intel type. That was also the reason for Muyong to come for him. And Muru was there with Muyong. As it was 2 against 1, it was a very easy fight. It was a good luck? Do you think that will explain it all? Muru said, a bit taken back. Certainly, being able to locate the insect caves was credited to Muyong. After locating the insect caves by applying the memory of Dantalian, and based on the traces of the insects, Muyong had instructed his underlings who specialized in stealth to investigate as to when Bane ate, and even how many times he visited in detail. After such analysis, they had come to the location with the highest probability. In fact, it was a 50/50 chance, yet it was high enough to take a bet. However, there was no need for him to explain those details to Muru. Myung walked, ignoring Muru. Since we have taken out Bane, an intelligence agent, now is the time to cut off their legs. The demon gods were slowly mobilizing. No matter what, there would be many rumors going around. For example, the opposition has unified, and the transcendental beings were gathering. This type of information would cause them to react. However, they do not know that B. Seungmin is making moves independently. Myung has opened up two fronts. He, himself, was moving with the opposition demon gods, and B. Seungmin had been independently mobilized to unify every race. They would first launch an attack on the 40th demon god Ram. The 57th demon god Os was next, the 60th demon god Bapula. Those ones who have sided with the coalition, but did not necessarily participate in meetings or such. Of course, there would be limitations even if the races were to unite. As a result, Myung was busy, personally moving about. It was to cause confusion by cutting intel transmission lines, so that good information did not get passed on. There was a limitation though. Myung stealthily raised his head. Muru. He has been chosen as Myung's shadow. No matter how much Myung had made his presence felt, there was a need for insurance. However, Myung wasn't a dumb person to let him know that he knew he was being watched. Hence, he was maintaining a sufficient distance. At any rate, Bane was causing a lot of headache for us. Since he has been disintegrated, even our opponents will feel the heat. Muru laughed quietly, as if he was truly happy. However, Myung wasn't sure whether Muru was part of the anti-coalition faction or not. Muru, Gremory, Fornews, Citri, Asmodeus. One of these was definitely a spy. Might be more than one. Myung must prevent passing of more than the absolutely necessary intel to them. For example, like B. Seungmin's mission, or information about Myung's powers. He must not have noticed my preying on Bane's powers. Myung was studying Muru's reactions. He felt it since the time when he had absorbed Laraja's power of divinity that they didn't seem to know that Myung could prey on powers. This was an important intel. Chapter 273. That was because it meant that Myung could use the powers whenever he needed to by hiding the act of using those stolen powers. It was then. Muru raised his right hand. He was able to communicate with any person tattooed with a certain glyph by raising his right hand, no matter how far away that person was. It was a highly useful ability in transmitting the intel that was gathered from watching over Myung. There would be no better tool for a spy than this ability. Soon, he lowered his hand and Muru spoke. Gremory has disintegrated Phoenix. Phoenix. The 37th demon god. He was the demon god that was in charge of strategy. It seemed that the simultaneous attack by 4 demon gods, including Gremory, was successful in destroying him. For now, the first step in the plan was going well. The initial attack was successful. The problem was from there on. At this time, 3 coalition demon gods have been annihilated. The moment that this was learned, they would hurriedly assemble. They would plan retaliation, and would mobilize to destroy the opposition. Paimon's a concern. There was one more demon god who, along with Bane, was gathering and delivering intel. Paimon. The one who reveals secrets. However, there was no way to know what he looked like. Even Dantalian didn't seem to know much about Paimon. That was an indication as to how skilled he was in moving about undetected. The worst-case scenario. The possibility that Paimon, in which he might have told Baal about the annihilation of Bane and Phoenix, must be put on the table. Baal would gather his allies and first attack Gremory, who was the face of the opposition. He would want to take care of things quickly, now when the whereabouts of Solomon was not known. We are definitely in the position of the minority, attacking the majority. There could never be a situation in which attacks are launched against the same or more number of demon gods. Even a single casualty on the opposition forces could become fatal. Hence, they must only engage in the fights in which victory was guaranteed. Muyong stroked his chin. The best move that Muyong could make if and when Baal was to mobilize after hearing from Paimon. Toss a bait. They could never exclude Solomon. Then, Gremory. She would become the bait. In the middle of the demon god's territory. The land of death where there were endless lightning and storms. The temple of Baal, the first one, was there. At the temple in the sky, which can only be reached by climbing up tens of thousands of stairs, Baal was acting as the controller of all things as he looked down on the world. During ordinary times, there wouldn't be anyone else, but Baal. However, now, there were several coalition demon gods who were seeking his audience. Baal. Seated on the seat of great power, he looked down upon the demon gods who were looking up as they knelt. Paimon was there as well. He was before Baal in his true flesh, rather than in his spiritual form. Oh, Baal, the opposition is mobilizing in earnest. I've confirmed Bane's demise. Is it only Bane? As if he already knew everything. As his piercing eyes looked deeper into Paimon's mind, Paimon paused for a moment before continuing. Mobilizations of Gremory and the opposition demon gods have been confirmed. The anticipated destination is believed to be where Phoenix is. We won't be able to defeat them. I concur. Baal was certain of Phoenix's demise. However, Baal did not take his eyes off of Paimon. Paimon, isn't there something that you're hiding? I'm not hiding anything. I know of your limitations. You're not able to reveal a deity's secret. However, if it concerns him, you must tell me. The reference to him was Solomon. His whereabouts cannot be located. Paimon immediately replied as if he had prepared it in advance. Solomon. Paimon was watching him. However, he could not talk about it easily. If he was to talk about Solomon, he must also talk about the fight with King Slayer, and naturally, the subject of Solomon being kept in time would be known. Should he reveal that kind of secrets, Paimon would not be able to prolong his own existence. And he has decided that it wasn't something to be mentioned unless he was absolutely certain. Solomon knew that Paimon was watching him. That, itself, could be a trap. I trust you. Baal moved his eyes away from Paimon. Although he said that he trusted him, was he, really, trusting Paimon? Paimon denied it internally. As Paimon did not trust Baal and other demon gods, he, too, would not be trusted by anyone. However, he could not verbalize it. Baal. For he was a true god. Like Solomon. Then Baal looked on other demon gods. There gathered a total of 11 demon gods at the temple. It would take a while for everyone to gather, but this was a good number for the task. The opposition's attack is already expected. As he has appeared, he would be in contact with the opposition party. And it also implies that he is not, yet, whole. That is Solomon. The demon gods showed nervous expressions. Solomon. They knew of his powers better than anyone else. However, Baal, who was before them, was also an equally powerful being. He is not completely free from limitations of Lemegeton. It is likely that he is still hiding with Diablo. He must certainly be near Gremory. What Baal said was absolutely true. That was because even Paimon discovered Solomon while watching Gremory. Find him. And finish him. Toog. The demon gods lowered their heads. Then they instantaneously vanished. Baal's words were absolute. As soon as he said something, it had to be done. However, one of them still remained. Paimon, is there something you want to say? The mobilizations of the transcendental beings seem serious. I've heard that the king of the north has gone into Gremory's camp. That's not all. The king of the dragons, the child of the moon, and the masters of the mountains are all moving independently. The transcendental beings that ruled over everywhere were also threats to demon gods. Therefore, they were always being kept on watch. Were the transcendental beings influenced by his words also? No. There is another one who is mobilizing them. Another one. Paimon took a deep breath. This, too, was one of the big secrets. As it was the same that had attacked him. It meant that he was at the level of deity, and further, it was believed that he even made contact with the masters of the darkness. By revealing this, Paimon would be immobilized for at least a month. However, it was an unavoidable sacrifice that he had to make in order to avoid Baal's suspicion. Myung, do you know that name? Chapter 274. Chapter 260 Part 1. A War with the Demon Gods, 3. At this time, there were 300,000 troops under Myung's command. With the King of the Dead joining, he has gathered strong reinforcements and a great army. That number was close to 5 million, but they were following the orders of the King of the Dead, not Myung. Even if the dead were in Myung's army, there was a slight, yet a significant difference. Speed was critical in any war, especially when it came to a war with the demon gods. Therefore, there was a small difference in the utilization of this army that required another layer of command, from those who could be immediately mobilized with a single, direct order. The King of the Dead was surprised. A tent was pitched in grand scale. Myung was using his magic to block off anyone who might be listening. That was how dangerous what Myung was about to do was. Those demon gods that are after Gremory. You have to stop some of them. In the meantime, I'll attempt to reconcile with one of them. You say it as if that was so easy. The King of the Dead scoffed. A strategy to reconcile with one of the invading demon gods? Although it was a difficult task, it would be incredibly beneficial should it succeed. Even if the King of the Dead was strong enough to take on one demon god, it was just obvious that there would be at least 7 demon gods that would be attacking. Both Myung and the King of the Dead would be in danger. It's not impossible to do. Myung shrugged his shoulders. He was at a disadvantage, but it wasn't that there was not a way. Do you have a plan? I've identified the spy that was leaking information to the coalition. Myung has been watching and investigating from both inside and outside of the anti-coalition camp. In other words, Myung had been investigating everyone, not just the ones watching him. The only objective of Myung was to track down the spy. That was, those who were playing both sides against each other, by providing intel to both the coalition and the anti-coalition demon gods in order to preserve themselves. Are you going to detain the bastard? If he realizes that we know the identity, he will immediately go and defect to the coalition. What was important was that the identity of the spy has been uncovered. However, he wasn't about to let them know that. The effect would be maximized by playing dumb, leaking false information to set a trap for the coalition. So who is that spy? All 4 demon gods, except Gremory. What? The King of the Dead heaved out a sigh. That was right. Gremory. With the exception of her, everyone was a traitor. Although Myung had his suspicions, he didn't think that it would turn out to be all 4 of them. However, after having watched over them, he found that all 4 of them had contacted coalition agents. Even they would not be able to deny it, other than argue how severe was their betrayal of the anti-coalition faction. It was as if Gremory was engaged in a lonely battle by herself. Gremory was expendable. Even the King of the Dead understood the reality of the situation. He also got it from what he has been hearing. This was also true. Without the appearances of Myung and Solomon, Gremory would have become prey for Ors and Larija. Immediately after that, those remnant anti-coalition members would defect to the coalition. The fact that they still remained here proved they were still weighing their options and calculating their possible benefits and penalties based on the current situation. As a result, they weren't all in on the invasion. They also did not show much opposition when Myung said that he was using Gremory as bait. So, do we need our own spy in return? If that was the case, I would hope for an influential demon god. How are you going to leak information that would put them in disarray? We will have to use Solomon. Solomon would make an entrance. Of course, he would not be making a true appearance, but by simply leaking that information, the enemy's mobilization would be severely hampered. There would be less and less of them that would take the lead. This scenario would be perfect for this situation. I have no fear of the likes of the demon gods. However, it is a risky gamble. He knew what the risks were. He wanted to learn what he didn't understand about the art of death through Myung. But Myung was standing on a very treacherous slope. With the slightest misstep, he would fall off the cliff. However, Myung was confident. Even if he wasn't confident, he had to appear confident. That was the position that Myung was in. You have no answers. The King of the Dead shook his head as he realized that Myung did not have an answer. Certainly, without such audacity, he would not have been able to train the Crimson Balrog. But then, why are you still hiding your powers? Hiding my powers? Myung asked as if he didn't understand what the King of the Dead was talking about. I know the secret as I have learned the same powers. Do you not have 4 wings? It was a pointed question. Myung had 3 pairs of wings to start with. Although he had 6 wings, the demon gods only knew of 4 wings. Myung did not trust anyone from the get-go. Even when he met Gremory, and when he went to rescue her. He had even hidden the last 2% of his powers even at the very dangerous time when he was fighting Larija. It was because that was the only way that he could survive. It was because that was the only way that he could change the future. He must not show all his cards. Myung only had a subtle smile. The King of the Dead clicked his tongue. You are the first one that I've ever seen to be more sly than I. Having received the order to annihilate Gremory, 11 demon gods were mobilizing rapidly. The one that led them from the front was Amun, the 7th-ranked demon god. He was the demon god called the creator of magic and the original master of Enrith. Born with the mystic eyes that could analyze anything, and being a cruel tyrant, even the other demon gods were uncomfortable around him. He was even in a worse temper these days. He even controls Enrith's mind. Who is that bastard? Chapter 275. Chapter 260 Part 2. According to the intel from the spy, it was said that Enrith was under Myung's control. It must have been true as no one would be mistaken about Enrith, who was the demon god of iron. In fact, the linkage that was felt from Enrith had at some point disappeared. He broke the Geese spell that I had placed. Enrith was one of the strongest demon gods. Certainly, from Amun's perspective, he had no choice but to place a strong Geese spell or someone like that. However, Myung had destroyed that Geese spell and taken control of Enrith's mind. Could this really have happened? He was curious. Even if he had learned all the schools of magic, mind control was a very different and separate field. Even Amun could not control the mind of other demon gods that were under his command. Hence, he has joined in this expedition. Only for the purpose of seeing the one called Myung. The intention was to, if possible, verify the mind control skill and take it from him. Sheik. At that moment, one of the small tattoos on his left hand turned blue-green. An intel has arrived from Muru. Amun's spy was Muru. He was the double agent that Amun had planted. He even heard the stories of Myung from him. As he allowed the call by using his magic, the information that Muru has sent naturally entered Amun's mind. Gremory and Solomon will meet. Amun shook. Should Solomon appear, Diablo would be with him. Of course, Amun was not scared of Diablo. Furthermore, Baal has said that Solomon would not be able to use his powers. That's strange. However, for Solomon to be meeting Gremory was strange, especially in such a time. It was strange to beg for mercy from Solomon to begin with. Eliminate Baal by being on the side of the anti-coalition? Solomon was an absolute, faultless executioner. He had the heart of steel that showed no blood or tear. Amun knew him well. No matter on which side it is, it was rather an opportune time. But if it was the truth, Amun has decided that it would be the best chance to overcome the terror of Solomon. If Diablo could be eliminated, Solomon's influence would decrease tremendously. Even if it was not true, Gremory's destruction has been predicted. However, it must not be the same case for others. Amun, it seems as if it would be necessary to reorganize the ranks. We will rest here for a while before moving forward. Botus. Botus, the 17th ranked demon god, came forth first. It seemed as if he wanted to stay at the back and assess the situation. Certainly, it seemed like we might have moved too fast. We also need some time if we wanted to capture Gremory for sure. Nay Brias. Click. Aemon clicked his tongue. You foolish ones! It was obvious that spies were planted on the anti-coalition side. They probably heard about the appearance of Solomon at the same time, so it just meant that they didn't want to be at the front. They were the definition of what cowardice was. Although 11 demon gods have been dispatched with Amun, there were, in the end, only 5 demon gods, along with Amun, that would take the lead in capturing Gremory. The remaining 7 of them went to the back by making up all sorts of excuses. They only wanted to preserve themselves, yet it seemed quite pathetic. Just exactly how long will they fear Solomon? Perhaps, they might be deifying Solomon way too much. The one who had thrown them out into this world and destroyed their birthplace. Amun continued as he stood at the front of the pack. We will destroy Gremory as we have planned. There will be no mercy. Toong! 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 The king of the dead was stomping the ground with his staff at the top of a tall mountain. A strange sound resonated each time his staff hit the ground. 5. He felt the 5 demon gods approaching from afar. He also felt the millions of demons that were approaching with them. Even if for the king of the dead, he couldn't battle against 5 demon gods, at the same time. The troops that he had under his command could not overcome the sheer numbers. However, buying time and disrupting the enemy was a possibility. Toong! As he hit the ground with his staff again, the surrounding scenery changed. Shwing! There came a snowstorm. A countless number of snow-capped mountains were bending and bending again. Limited force projection. The king of the dead was the king of the north. He has ruled as a king for a long time. There was no one who could withstand his powers in the snows of the north. That was in the past, is at present, and will be in the future. Come! I will show you the true king that brings forth the power of death. The king moved with the powerful storm. Beyond sight, the king of the dead was fighting. By placing a shield, he was preventing the demons from going beyond the area. Truly impressive. Gremory let out a silent admiration. The transcendental beings. It was certainly the power that fit that name. He was holding up against the 5 demon gods by himself. He would not be able to win. However, Mweong was pessimistic. The king of the dead. He was strong, but there were too many enemies. It would be buying time at best. We'll be focusing our attacks to those that may escape the shield. Do not let down your guards. Focus. There were about 3 million troops around Gremory. Most of them were under the command of Gremory. The other anti-coalition demon gods took a step back by saying that they would support remotely from the back. Perhaps, if they were to sense victory, they would quickly appear for the benefits. On the other hand, if they were to sense defeat, they would, likewise, disappear quickly, like ghosts. Only Mweong joined in. Even Gremory must have sensed that everyone else, other than her, was acting as a spy. Or she might have known it for a long time. Perhaps, that was why Gremory's eyes softened further as she looked on Mweong. Have you ever justified yourself in face of certain defeat? She asked Mweong. Come to think of it, Gremory's defeat has always been certain. She had lost in the past, and also because the coalition had annihilated humanity. However, Muyeong shook his head. No. You are strong. You are strong too. Muyeong briefly replied. If Muyeong was strong, then so was Gremory. She did not give up until the end. Muyeong knew that too well. Gremory put on a small smile. Thank you. It is too early to be thanking me. Sheik. Chai-jeek. Right then. Someone has forcefully torn up the shield. A shield with such power and scale was being shattered at will. There were only a limited number of demon gods that could wield such power. And Gremory opened her mouth as she stared at the very first one that came through the shield. Amen. Chapter 276. Chapter 261. A War with the Demon Gods, 4. Amen. The ruler of all magic. The top-ranked demon god who holds the 7th seat. Muyeong paused for a moment. It's because not even Muyeong had expected him to show up. The top demon gods are not good at cooperating with each other. Amen. Why was he here? If there is something that weighed on Amen's mind, it is Enrith. Enrith was originally the king of the demons under the command of Amen. Muyeong had lifted a spell that Amen casted on Enrith, by turning him undead. There's no way that Amen, the magic ruler, could fail to notice it. Moreover, other informers may have told him that Enrith was obeying Muyeong. Although this development was predicted, the timing was earlier than expected. Amen is aiming for me. Muyeong summed up his thoughts. If the first opponent is Amen, this would be beyond his capabilities. To be honest, Amen is one of the worst opponents. In Dantalian's memories, Amen played the role of a strategic coordinator. It means, he had the role of directing Baal and other demon gods. He was recognized for his excellent skills, and not even Dantalian knew Amen's ability. Honestly, there were too many unknowns. It will be a bad match. Will you give up? Muyeong snapped bitterly at Gremory. Gremory was well aware of the power of Amen. Numerous demons rushed to block the demon god who had torn the barriers created by the King of Death, but a huge explosion occurred when Amen just crooked a finger. Like moths rushing a bonfire, the demons fell in shower of bodies, blood, and body parts. He'll get here. 5 minutes will be enough. Gremory shook his head. Amen is one of Baal's closest allies. If we can beat him, it will certainly suppress the action of the coalition. You are optimistic. I don't want to lose. Gremory clasped her hands. Unlike when she fought Larija, she is recovered now. Schwang. Schwang. Zwang. All the demons under Gremory's command are covered with a pink shield. Quivoan. And a huge statue of the demon goddess appeared on the ground in front of Gremory. At the same time, Amen's attack weakened. I created a barrier to minimize magic power. This is all I can do. She said it as if it was nothing, but it was great enough. Amen, the founder of magic. His magic power figures would easily exceeded 1,000. Not just 1,000, if Muyeong's instincts are correct, it actually exceeds 1,500. Amen is really the highest level of demon god. But Gremory was coping with it. Although it didn't have much effect, it was true that Amen's attacks were significantly reduced. Even though she had put mana barriers on millions of their forces. It was an operation beyond common sense. It is amazing no matter how many times Muyeong saw it. However, Muyeong can't sit back and wait. Takin. I'm gonna send you in. Takin stood with confidence. He seems to know what roles he should do. Takin, who rode the bone dragon, looked as if he could be called a dragon knight. Block the breach with the crimson balrog. We need to plug the gap, so that the shields of the King of the Dead wouldn't be broken. How long can barriers stop the demon gods? It's sure to break. It was a matter of time. What Muyeong can do is to delay the time as much as possible. So they should isolate Amen and try to win. Okay. Takken flew on the bone dragon. Crimson Balrog glanced Muyong, and the flapped his wings. Muyong spread out his 4 wings. He took out Gabriel's spear and separated out the power of Lucifer. And there was a something that he felt when he concentrated on this task. Paimon. It was the similar feeling he had felt in the battle with Larija before. Like someone is spying him. Paimon is the only one having a skill like this. Perhaps the reason why this immense host quickly reached this place, was because of Paimon. Then there was a possibility that this fight would also reach Baal's ears. What should he do? Should he remove Paimon's spy first? It was impossible to deal negligently with Amun. Maybe this was finally the time to use the skills Muyong had kept hidden as trump cards. But it's strange. The movement of Paimon's spy was strange. He wasn't looking at Muyong. He wasn't looking Gremory, his opponents, or even Amun. What he's looking at is something farther away. He was watching something that even Muyong couldn't detect. So even though Muyong was able to detect his magical spying, Paimon wasn't aware the spy was being spied on. Muyong turned his eyes to the place where Paimon's spy was looking. He closed his eyes, broadened his sense more and accepted the surroundings completely. And, he found. There was another one watching this war the same as Paimon. In exquisite irony, the information sown to confuse their enemies became the truth. Solomon! Solomon! He was here. Muyong's face became stern. Worms? How dare they? The city of Loim, the demon god of 40th seat, began to burn. In other words, the conditions of his extinction, destruction of his city has been achieved. At the moment, Loim's influence diminished. Loim and his demons have become weaker. Loim and his army, who had been crushing mountains, began to pull back little by little. However, the Allied forces, who had declared a holy war, wasn't in good condition either. Huff huff, damn it! There's no end. Ah! It was a battlefield full of curses, screams, and swords tearing the flesh. All were out of their minds. Because of too many deaths. However, there were always more to kill. Loim wasn't just being beaten. I'll kill you all. I'm gonna show you what the true destroyer is. No matter how weak he is, Loim is a demon god. There was an earthquake when he struck the ground. Thump. 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 Baea. No one could stop Loim's rush in the shape of a giant rhino. Loim's charge was capable of collapsing buildings. Someone caught under his pad feet was crushed into paste. Crazy rhinoceros! Stop him! Do something! Although the city was destroyed, there were too few who could directly confront the demon god. The absence of someone truly strong. However, Merlin and Hansung were facing Loim. Leader of Void. Huff huff. Kim Tae-won raised his willpower to the limit. It is unknown how many demons he killed. Chapter 277. He gave up counting it over 100. He felt like the saliva in his mouth has dried up and eyes were being plucked out. And he thought he'd be finished soon. A rhino-shaped Loim was rushing toward Kim Tae-won. It's hard to avoid. It was like a slow motion. And instinctively, he felt death. Can't be avoided. In front of sure death, he smiled. I wanted to see it once more. Suddenly he remembered the time when he was in the Blue Temple. The relationships he made there still remain deep in Tae-won's memory. If he could meet them again, he would brag that he'd changed a lot and he became the vice master of a prominent guild with his efforts. Many things have changed since Tae-won became the vice master of his guild. It has improved greatly, by kicking out the corrupt, generously supporting the recruits with potential, and helping to change the attitudes of the great city itself. Rotten vested interests. He'd stood against them. As promised to Muyong, to show everyone, Kim Tae-won had gone his own way. Muyong was correct. Tae-won is a hero. He is a hidden contributor. But is it too early to taste the glory? Thump. 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 Baea. Loim rushed toward him. Tiwan gripped his sword with the last of his last strength. I will not just die. He will be seen fighting until the end. It's unfair to end by just giving up. But when Loim closed to Tiwan, he stopped. Loim stopped and looked up at the sky. At the same time, the sun was obscured. The deep darkness. The moon rose. What happened? Why is it suddenly? The sun disappeared. What the hell is that? What is that thing? While everyone was making a fuss, there was a huge thing coming through the darkness. It was shaped like a dragon, but the size wasn't comparable to a normal dragon. It's just filled the sky. He is coming. Hansung smiled, wiping his bloody lips with his hand. The king of dragons. He finally showed up. But he wasn't alone. Isn't he only in the early teens now? Next to him, there was a boy or a girl with blue eyes and hair. The eyes seemed to have frost without emotion, and no one knew the reason. It was creepy just watching it. And the child of the moon. Hansung knelt in the middle of the war. The child of the moon. One of the four transcendents who rule the world. A power that had never been seen before and veiled in secrets. But now, its presence appeared with the king of dragons. That's not all. Countless dragons following the king of dragons. Numerous spirits following the child of the moon. They attacked Loim and his underlings. Arg! Do you think I'll lose? Loim shrieked. But with their appearance, the battlefield was sharply tilted. Loim, weakened by the completion of the extinction conditions, couldn't fight all of them. Allied forces were dumbfounded for a moment. What's that? Are they our forces? What's going on here? Ha Xiang approached to the dragons immediately. And he sheathed his sword and spoke with courtesy. Thank you for your decision, your majesty, and thank you, my lord child of the moon. The king of dragons didn't answer. Instead, the child of the moon opened his mouth. Where is Muyong? What? He isn't here. We have to go to him. It will be too late if he meets Solomon. Hansung tilted his head. The child of the moon. He shouldn't feel any emotions from the child, but he seemed anxious. Could you tell me the reason? The angel of Solomon taken away by Baal, it is in Muyong. The angel. The child closed his eyes and said. If Solomon recovers that angel, Solomon is complete. Then the world will be over. Solomon tilted his head. This is because there was one thing that caught the eye, even though he reached here while trying to figure out the movements of the demon gods. It's strange. Almost nothing could attract this much of his attention. Neither Amun nor Gremory received the attention of Solomon. But strangely enough, the winged guy was interesting. Solomon looked up the sky. Stars? The stars are moving. The stars are moving with him in the center. The guide of the stars. Come to think of it, Kingslayer was looking at the stars. Kingslayer wasn't an emotional person. But when he saw the stars, he was acting as if he felt hope. Why? Why he did do? That's him. Solomon was sure. Kingslayer's hope was that winged guy. But it was disappointing. By the strength he could feel, it was like a high-level demon god. But then he can never reach Solomon. In addition, there were so many disparate energies felt. In short, it's just an assortment. Solomon has also never met the one in full of chaos like that. Kingslayer, the hope you've seen and believed in is really poor. What would Kingslayer have felt if that hope was lost? Solomon reached out his hand. If he had been able to exert a proper influence in this world, he could have gotten rid of him right now. Unfortunately, however, more intervention than necessary was impossible. He's the guide of the stars. He had the divinity and carried the stars. It means that he was recognized in this world, so Solomon couldn't deal with him now. It would be possible to intervene with Diablo, but he didn't want to show up on this battlefield. The guide of the stars was lucky. Then Solomon looked at him again. He almost missed it, but no matter how he looked, it was strange. That's the power of chaos. A human being can handle it. Besides, that human's time flow was very heterogeneous. The axis of time is working differently. Not right now, but Solomon was able to even manipulate time in the past. Of course, it means that he can also recognize the heterogeneity of time. Solomon's eyes turned black eventually. Thus, Solomon could even see the soul. And found. Solomon was shuddering, like someone who found something important that was lost long ago. It was the spirit that had been taken away by Baal and he couldn't find where it was. Als Paulina, my angel. An angel who had helped Solomon manipulate time. The angel was with Myung. He didn't know what happened, but it was clear. And if he can get the angel back, he doesn't have to bother with Diablo. He could make this world a pile of ashes right now. King Slayer. Is that what you believed in? Solomon was fascinated. And soon he smiled and opened his mouth. I'll have to get it back. Because Als Paulina, it was originally his angel. Chapter 278. Chapter 262. A War with the Demon Gods, 5. It was supposed to be a tactic to confuse and shake the enemy troops. The disinformation succeeded in restricting their movements and sowing chaos among the enemy ranks. However, if the false information became real, it would become a problem. I am not yet prepared. Baal and Solomon are the two great peak existences. They had to be faced last after finishing everything else. Myung had been doing everything he could to make this happen. He had hid his forces, dispersed it, moved them separately to attack the enemies in converging columns. Of course, the downside in this situation was that Myung's forces couldn't be concentrated immediately. One thing was sure. Facing Solomon in this state was a bad idea. Moreover, Myung and Dantalian did not know much about Solomon. Did he have an annihilation condition, or did it even exist? Myung could not make a move without knowing. He thought about Amon's attack, Paimon's intentions, and the risk posed by Solomon. Only Myung was aware of Solomon since Paimon remained a bystander even now. A broken bicycle. The thought popped to Myung's head. Myung had started off running and then just kept sprinting. He faced demon gods and moved on before their supporters sensed Myung. He had no brakes and didn't even think of stopping. It was like a broken bicycle, and Myung had only pumped the pedals recklessly. So, were the results showing now? There may be side effects to his blitzkrieg tactics. He had thought that these things could happen. Eating fast may upset your stomach, but Myung just didn't have the time. His supporters and allies would become more stable as time passed. If the opposition was in disarray due to his tactics, they immediately collected their strength and swept the field. The eating references in Guderian's theories about blitzkrieg. Rapid-fire conquest without digesting the occupied territories could lead to unrest and uprisings. Since Myung knew what could happen, he operated quickly. He managed to use luck, skill, and other elements to cover what he could not prepare to come here. However, Myung was not at all prepared to face Solomon. Not one thing was ready yet. Something is being prepared. Also, Myung instinctively felt danger and that Solomon had discovered something. His instincts shouted to escape. But there was something strange. If Solomon, who even the demon gods feared, wanted something from Myung, he only had to take it. However, Solomon did not try to harm Myung immediately. He was probably preparing to summon Diablo. Solomon is unable to use his powers fully in this world yet. Myung remembered Gremari's words. If Solomon could use his powers, he wouldn't need to summon Diablo. Then, Solomon cannot attack me directly. Myung made a tentative conclusion. However, it was still dangerous if Diablo was summoned. Even Baal was wary of Diablo, and it was impossible for Muyong to face him alone. However, there was still time. "What is wrong?" Gremory asked in a tired voice. She seemed surprised that Muyong was not moving. Muyong thought over what should be done first and decided. "Watch your back." "Back? He is here." "He is Solomon." Gremory flinched. Her pupils dilated, and she seemed to be astonished. However, she had met Solomon once before. It might be possible for Gremory to buy them some time rather than Muyong, who had never faced him before. If that was not even feasible, they had to move quickly. Thud! He kicked the ground and jumped. Muyong stretched his wings wide and pierced the sky. He left behind a contrail as he flew to where Amen was. There were thundering and crashing sounds. Scenes of massacre surrounded Amen. Massive storm clouds scattered searingly bright lightning, and Amen was rapid-firing massive fireballs with both hands. He summoned typhoons of wind blades to shred the demons flying at him by the dozens. Hundreds of demons died whenever one of his spells shrieked. At least among Muyong's troops, Crimson Balrog and Taken were tanking the front line, supported by Gremory's protection shields so enemies could not break the line. However, Amen was showing to the battlefield why he was one of the seven. Amen is the master of magic. If he feared Solomon, he must have researched a solution. Muyong was convinced that this was true. Magic was mystery, and someone who wields mystery should not surrender to it. Solomon was the mystery itself, and to Amen, he was someone to overcome. If Muyong managed to bring Amen in, it might be possible. But how? Domination is difficult. Muyong had planned to dominate at first. However, Solomon's actions were ominous. If Muyong used too much of his strength, his efforts could lead to disaster. Muyong drew grief. With a low ringing sound, he let it wail and slashed sideways at Amen. The black thunderbolt flew straight to Amen with a violent crash. Amen grabbed it with his hands. It was a fantastic sight. Amen had grabbed a writhing black thunderbolt, using the gloves on his hands. Those gloves are made for magic control. Muyong knew that with a single exchange. Those gloves suited Amen due to their immense capability. Muyong could not believe Amen had caught the black thunderbolt. Amen threw the black thunder back at Muyong. With a thundering roar, Muyong was targeted with his own attack. Muyong raised grief and sliced the black thunder into two. He was able to manage this because the first attack had not been his most powerful attack. If Muyong had shot the black thunderbolt at maximum and Amen had reflected it, he could not have sliced it so easily. "So, you are Muyong?" Amen stared at Muyong with an intrigued face. Muyong only stared back silently. "How did you remove my geis and control Enrith? Don't you know already?" It was simple. It was because Muyong's power, the power of his authority was stronger. Amen also knew that. He had asked the question because he did not want to acknowledge this fact. Muyong had touched Amen's nerve. "Well, I don't. But..." Amen dusted off his hands once, and transparent wind blades formed around Muyong. There had to be at least 10,000 of them. Muyong was impressed that he could form an overwhelming attack with simple gesture. Chapter 279. I don't think I will lose. With a whipping sound, Muyong dodged in between the blades. However, he could not avoid them all. He stretched his wings and held the lance of Gabriel. Muyong had separated Lucifer and Gabriel's powers. As he swung his lance, the heightened wind pressure pushed the closest blades away from him. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. 128. He accelerated sequentially rather than all at once. Muyong's speed increased exponentially, and when he accelerated 128 times, he could escape from the blade storm. However, Amen was the master of magic. He had already implemented his next move the moment he felt something was wrong. Vapor explosion. Countless water drops filled the air. Amen added his magic to the tiny particles of water that could not be seen by the eye, magically separating the oxygen and hydrogen to make explosives. Myung was at a disadvantage because no matter how fast he accelerated, there were no gaps in the explosive fog. "I'm doing it anyway." He could retreat. However, Myung pushed through. Acceleration was not a skill that could be used for long. Moreover, he had to finish this battle with Amen as quickly as possible. Myung's goal was to reach him. He just needed to touch him to take the next step. With a whirring noise, the water drops began to spin. While they looked like slow motion to Myung, the problem was that there was no gap in the coverage. Myung covered himself with his wings and flew across the air. With blasting noises, explosions followed Myung everywhere. Myung's black wings became tattered. If it was a normal wound, Myung could heal with holy blessing, but Amen's magic was strange. It adhered to Myung's body to block regeneration or healing. He attacked my weakest points. Myung could not expect constant regeneration like when he was attacked by the Crimson Balrog. However, Amen was nearby. Amen sensed that Myung was coming at lightning speed. He made his next move in a flash. Crunch! Myung twisted his leg as an ice lance had pierced it. While pain rolled into him, Myung did not try to remove the lance. He shrunk the space between them again to approach Amen. Myung grabbed Amen's shoulders and cancelled his acceleration. It was not for attack. It will open to those who knock. It was Ars Nova, the book containing the language of miracles. Amen's eyes shook when he heard the prayer. "How do you know that prayer?" No one believed that the self-named archangel had the Ars Nova. Amen did not believe it, but now he knew it was true. Did Ars Nova also lift the Geis from Enrith? Amen tried to resist, but Myung was a step faster. Sure. Light flooded from Myung's eyes and connected with Amen's. This prayer performed the miracle of opening someone's soul. Even though it mercilessly drained him, Myung braced himself. "I see it." Myung saw Amen's soul. They were now connected as Myung opened the door. Myung then entered the real battle. Art of Death. It was not to make Amen an undead, which was impossible in the first place. No one with divinity could become undead. Since an undead is an incomplete being, it is incompatible with a divine being who aims for perfection. So why was this a fight? It had to do with Amen's annihilation condition. Amen has to be involved in a phenomenon he cannot understand. Amen is the master of magic and has perfect confidence in himself. Therefore, he tries to understand and solve everything. This is how he earned the title Master of Magic. Ars Nova? While it was called the miraculous prayer, it was still an extension of magic. Amen could understand this phenomenon. However, if Amen was ruled even for a moment by the power Myung wielded, Amen would be truly connected with Myung at that moment and would taste the chaos in Myung. He would not be able to understand at all who Myung is, and how Myung ruled over him. It only needed to work for a moment, for less than 1/10 of a second. Myung had to rule over Amen for that time. It was Myung's last desperate gamble made with his final trump card, the spell of Ars Nova, and the only hope he had in this inescapable situation. It was a battle of wills, and Myung began to shed bloody tears. Blood flowed from every orifice he had. Myung's soul was much weaker than a demon god's soul, and Amen as a seeker had a much firm soul than other demon gods. Is it impossible? Myung was losing the battle of wills, and he clenched his teeth. He could not step back. Souls were striking against each other dangerously, and Myung's soul might disintegrate under the onslaught. However, at that moment, where their souls are almost intermingled, Amen's expression changed. Time. Amen seemed astonished, even more than he did when Myung used Ars Nova. However, this change made a crack, and Myung's soul rose up to win within the time necessary for a single heartbeat. Amen was under Myung's control for 7 seconds. His eyes clouded for a moment. I did it. Muyoung rushed to the next step. 7 seconds were more than the time he had expected. It was enough to carve an absolute mandate on his soul, although Muyoung could not use a command Amen would resist instinctively. Only act for yourself. Muyoung's words implied that Amen was the master of magic, who analyzed and solved all. If things were normal, he would never follow anyone, fear anyone, and would walk for only his own good. Only act for yourself. Muyoung had removed the bolt that locked what Amen had unconsciously wanted, so it would be enough. Chapter 280. 263 Part 1. Chapter 263. A War with the Demon Gods, 6. Amen's eyes regained their focus after exactly 7 seconds. They shook when Amen took in the changes in his surroundings and in himself. How? What did you do to me? He did not know or understand. The annihilation condition was complete. Of course, even if the condition was complete, it would be difficult for Muyoung to eradicate him. Lower-level demon gods became greatly weakened when their annihilation condition was complete, but a demon god of Amen's class was not affected in any way. However, Muyoung was satisfied. Amen was confused because he did not know the command Muyoung had placed deep into him. Did you go back in time? Why is that angel in your soul? Angel? Was he talking about Gabriel? Amen was correct about going back in time. He seemed to have found it by directly coming into contact with Muyoung's soul. Muyoung also was not sure how he had gone back in time, but Amen looked as if he had an insight into Muyoung's time travel. That's impossible. How can something like this happen? Nothing is impossible. Impossible is only in your mind. Amen glared at Muyoung. He was angry but was also controlling his anger at the same time. Amen. The master of magic and the seeker of truth. He had been lifted from the shackles put on by Baal and Solomon. While he seemed unaware yet, the effects would begin to show. Muyoung spoke slowly. Amen, are you still afraid of Solomon? It was a primal fear for demon gods. The events that occurred before they became demon gods were trauma tormenting them for eons. Even though they became divine beings and took steps to be complete, that fear never went away. So, they assembled around Baal, who functioned as a core. He was a being that would dilute their fears for them. Amen half opened his eyes. Do you think I fear someone like Solomon? That's good. Muyoung turned his head. Amen was confused right now. His mind was disordered to the extent he forgot to attack Muyoung. Muyoung was the first unknown Amen had come into contact with. He was chaos itself, in a completely different way from Solomon and Baal. So Muyoung initiated the negotiations. Which would you choose from the unknown, which is me, or the fear that is Solomon? The world burned when Muyoung finished his question. The sun turned redder, and an unbelievable heat scorched everything. Gremory hurriedly placed a protective barrier, but it was not enough. The weak demons burned with shrieks. Countless bodies dropped on the ground after becoming ashes. Not only that, the shields the king of the dead created to protect the rest of the demon gods were breaking apart. Diablo! Muyoung turned his head, and Amen also focused on that phenomenon. Diablo, the true owner of the flames who burned ores, the demon god of flames to death. He stood on 2 feet, but with tens of horns. Diablo looked closer to a dragon with a majestic aura. He had only appeared and looked at the world with his 2 eyes but was burning and erasing everything. Muyoung shuddered. It was the second time he encountered Diablo. However, the first time Diablo retreated due to Baal, as he had to escape from Baal's merciless attacks. This time it was different and incomparable with that time. Muyoung had thought with Amen's help he would be able to handle Diablo, but now Muyoung discarded that notion. Diablo has exceeded the world's limits. He had gone beyond the amount of power this world could hold. Solomon. Amen's gaze shook from fear, but also from his wrath resisting against it. Only act for yourself. The seeker of truth must not be restrained by anything. Amen clenched his teeth, but other demon gods were already retreating. Cowards! Amun sneered. The other demon gods were still mortally afraid of Solomon. If Baal did not act, they would only be cowards who continued to escape. Amun was no longer interested in Weung and how he controlled Enrith. It was the same for Baal's command to remove Gremory. Amun was only focused on what he faced. Amun wanted to win against what had been holding him back for so long, and now he had the chance right in front of him. With a loud shout, Diablo's attack was too fast for Amun to think any longer. A massive stream of fire burst out of Diablo's mouth, and the flames swallowed the entire sky. It burned everything in its path and was rushing to Weung and Amun. Conflagration. Amun built a massive wall of ice to separate the space between them to quench Diablo's flames. However, it was not enough as Diablo's fire burned everything, including all phenomena. Amun clicked his tongue and removed his gloves. He revealed striking black hands, and Amun's magic began to fly out recklessly. Amun's horns grew, and his eyeballs turned black. Also, the muscles in his human form exploded and expanded. However, it was unstable, and Weung turned his gaze immediately to Gremory. Gremory nodded as she read what Weung wanted. She quickly removed the protective shields that were restricting magic. Amun began to show his might after the bothersome shields disappeared. Infinity Storm. Amun did not need to voice his spells to use magic, but epic-class spells needed to be voiced to enforce them. Amun's magic that overflowed soon resulted in massive chaos. An enormous round space formed in front of Amun, and it swallowed everything like a black hole.